On today's exciting installment of Goat and Hammer, 15 processes, we're going to start with lighting a coal forge. We often get asked questions about, how do you light a coal forge, so on and so forth. And there's a lot of kind of different ways to approach the same problem, but essentially you've got to build a core to that fire. It's a bit like lighting any other fire, really. You start off with a small fire and then you slowly build it up and up. The difference between green coal, coke, and breeze. Green coal is basically, this is actually a mix of anthracite and coal. It's not the best in the world, but it works pretty well. This has got a fair amount of volatile product in it. So when you first start lighting, it's going to be quite smoky. But those volatile gases and the resins that are in there actually help ignite the fuel. I don't know if I have any here. I didn't really prep anything for this. But if you cook the coal for a little while, this is starting to get there. This is starting to coke up and it becomes more brittle. It's more like the charcoal equivalent of coal. And eventually you wind up with breeze. And breeze is almost like popcorn. A lot of the volatile gases have come out of it. You're basically left with predominantly carbon, but it's not started really to combust. So essentially what you have is this thing that's really, really good. It's like dry tinder, really good to start your fire with. Low smoke, so on and so forth. So at the end of your fire, always make sure at the end of your day, you make yourself a little bit of breeze by loading up your fire, running it a little bit, allowing it to smoke out and the volatile gases burn off, and then just tear the whole thing apart and allow that to cool down, and you have a good starting point for the next day. Ash is a big one. Again, I don't have any in there because I basically throw it away, but ash is generally starting to get into a very, very fine particulate. It's essentially what is left of your hydrocarbon fuel, such as wood or coal or charcoal, that does not burn. So it's silicates and all kinds of other nonsense. If you get it hot enough, you'll actually produce this. I do have something. You'll actually produce something in this universe. This one's a pretty good one. This is essentially slag. It's pretty much glass at this point, so it's actually quite brittle, but it's hard and goopy. So this will actually choke up your fire if you're not careful. Don't let it build up in there. Clean out the fire fairly often.
Just for those of you who maybe don't know the word slag, I think a lot of people here call it clinker.
Clinker, sure, yes. Clinker as well. So the clinkers will actually build around your tuya, so your air inlet. So on this one, this is just a little small, low riveting forge. If you have a big fire pot with a clinker breaker in the bottom, you wind up with this kind of crystalline white and grey structure. When you are done running your fire, hoik that out, throw it away. You don't want to be trying to burn that because it's just going to mess up your fire quicker and quicker. When I was training back in Hereford, we actually started the fires with wood. And we'd beat the wood, give me a second. We'd beat the wood on the anvil. I've actually smashed this up before. I think I did this under a power hammer. But we'd actually beat it up on the wood, on the anvil. And what you're trying to do here is basically just build really, really good kindling. It fibers up very nicely, and that's going to catch the fire really, really well. And you tear a bit of that off, throw that on top of your paper, and you're going to get a really easy fire. It's actually a pretty efficient way to do it. And you can have pretty big chunks, and if you need to split it, you can come in, strike it on the end, split it up. We would use everything from like old pallets, pieces of old pallets, to bits of firewood that were just kicking around. It's kind of a weird way to start the day, smashing the hell out of bits of wood on your anvil. But I'll do a combination of the two today. But really, again, it's just about building a good fire, learning how to build a good fire, and then once you have built a good fire, maintaining it. Weird one that we came across whilst teaching at John C. Paul Garrett, who's a fabulous smith and the resident smith up there at John C. Campbell Folk School in Murphy, North Carolina. Quick plug there. What he does, he has a whole pile of print from the local newspaper. And what they do is they take a little piece, take a sheet of newspaper, it usually takes 2 to 3 sheets, and you start taking it and pulling it into center. And basically what you're trying to do is build this little mushroom or, what are they called? Jellyfish, with a little tail like this. And what you do is you light this tail and this nice little mushroom cap of the, sorry Jess, I keep moving it around on you. This little mushroom cap holds the fire on the inside, and then you can start packing the fuel around it. And if you've got good breeze or you've got good coal, it will ignite very, very easily. So, you have another comment there, Jess? But we found that this is a relatively good method to do it. And if you have access to good paper, this is actually packing paper that people have sent us stuff in. And because we're hoarders, we keep all our boxes and packing materials. There we go. A little thing that I learned many, many moons ago, especially if you do a lot of welding or forging, high temperature forging, don't keep a cheap liquid fuel lighter in your pocket, so like a Bic lighter. You get a BB that shoots into your pocket and ignites that thing. It can get quite surprising. You have like a fireball situation going on. So matches are a good option for lighting things, or get yourself a liquid rather than a gas or butane lighter. Allegedly, Zippos are a little less sketchy. I'll get my tail lit. No real rush here. If I get this over my air supply and start a nice gentle blow, and if I was to use solid wood or something like that, I'd add that around the bottom as well, and I'd build up a pretty good fire of that. And the real trick to it is just taking your time, feeding it, keeping that fuel down over the air hole. You can build a cavity if you're not careful. Oh, choke that a little bit. Mr. Lloyd would not be happy. That is not burnable, nor is it? Every once in a while, give everything a little poke down towards the hole. Because that newspaper or whatever paper or even wood, if you leave that there, it will create a cavity and basically stop your fuel from building a good head of heat. So, there you go.
Starting to smell good.
Yeah. So Mr. Lloyd, who I studied with many, many moons ago, he was always of the opinion that you should never have a particularly smoky fire, and he cusses out for it. His opinion was that there was no need to have a dirty, filthy, smoky fire, and you should be allowed to have it burn quite nicely with flame. So that's a pretty solid fire, pretty easy, pretty quickly. Once I got that built up, I like to bank it up a little bit, and because of how I'm going to access this fire, it'll be over here, I'm going to build like a horseshoe around this thing. The nice thing about a hand crank fire rather than a electric fire is that you burn way less fuel. But the problem is you burn way less fuel. So if you are trying to work larger pieces and you need to keep a bigger fire running, you might consider using an electric blower just to make your life a little easier. And that is hell of a smoky. There we go.
Well, we're burning all sorts of stuff in this coal too.
Yeah, this coal, Jessica and I dug out of the basement of a house over on Howell Mill-ish in Atlanta. The house is probably 100+ years old, and the coal had probably been there for just about as long. It was.
Yeah, we found all sorts of.
It's awesome when you get like raccoon jaws and things like that.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, we find that the piece of coal that we think we're burning is actually a rock.
Yeah.
A lot of folks worry about dryness of fuel, you know, keeping their fuel extra dry. I am actually of the completely utter opposite. I like to actually douse down my bucket of coal so that it's already pre-sloppy, so that all the finings, which are the loose, dusty particulates within your coal product, they will then become like a slurry and help build a really good canopy for your fuel. Anyway. That's not bad for a 60, 70-year-old little forge, right?
Not bad at all.
Coming up beautifully to temperature in the heart of that, you can see. And I'm going to douse that in just a wee bit so that fire doesn't get too big. As I say, we don't do a lot of coal work, so literally my dousing can this morning was one of our small wet down cans that I poked some holes in with the center punch. But I douse it down pretty well around the outside, and that will stop my fire from growing too large. There we go. And whilst I'm at this, I'm going to throw a cup of water onto my fuel that I have down here. And I know that there's a bunch of folk out there that are absolutely freaking out about that. But you know, we all have our own methods of running fires. If your fire runs well and efficiently for you, awesome, go for
And then when it's time to add more fuel to this, you always add in from under.
I try to, so like this is the wet slurry that I've built. With a fire like this one, I would be kind of adding more to the sides like this. If you have a deep fire pot, you approach the problem differently and you'll bank around the side, but when you push the fuel in, you're always pushing in low down here, trying to push fresh fuel into the bottom of your bowl. This kind of fire, like the riveting style of fire, it's a little trickier because you don't have that big bowl. But I just kind of bump it in around the bottom like that, trying to keep everything pulled to center. There we go. I do believe we've got a pretty solid little fire there. And because we're doing video today, we have got all the fans turned off so that the smoke isn't amply extracted out of the workshop, so it's going to probably get a little smoky in here. Alright, cool. That's how you light a fire. Pretty easy, eh? I'm going to go kick on the fan while Jess downloads the video.